So these nurses had a bond, just like the retired soldiers after the war had a bond and had societies that met and with their comrades. And the nurses formed the National Association of Army Nurses of the Civil War from 1881 to 1931. It did go defunct because by 1931 there weren't many members left at that time. This photo is from 1910. The group was founded in 1881 by Dorothea Dix, the original superintendent of nurses. It was primarily a social organization, but the group also advocated for and helped secure recognition for former Civil War nurses and helped with pressing the government to award pensions. Most got $12 a month, as I said. The group did disband in 1931. So this is July 1st, 1913. There was a reunion, 50th Civil War reunion at Gettysburg on July 1st, 1913. It was attended by more than 50,000 people. This is a photo of at least 4 of the surviving Civil War nurses who attended. Unfortunately, they were not named in this photo. I wish I knew who they were, but I don't. So these brave, independent women who served as nurses in the Civil War were extraordinary. They did defy social norms, and after the Civil War, continued to make history. So what happened? Well, because of the war, there was a recognition of the value, the need for trained nurses and the value of women nurses. And so the U.S., also with the influence of what Florence Nightingale had done in the Crimean War over in England, in fact, she did serve as an advisor to some nursing leaders, started schools of nursing. And so this photo here is from 1873, just a few short years after the end of the Civil War, where Clara Barton, who's seated in dark clothing, attended the first graduating class. Bellevue was the first formal training school for nurses in the United States. And it had been modeled after the Florence Nightingale model, which is basically that up to this time, nursing was a dirty profession. It was just people where nurses were drunks or prostitutes, or at least that's the way it was thought. And the Civil War changed all that, and then this changed that. You notice the nurses are all in white now. The Civil War nurses did not wear white, no matter what the Barbie Mattel people put her in. That is not a real Civil War nurse outfit. They wore plain calico dresses, brown, black, whatever. But now you see the nurses in white. They have caps. There's a formality to their training. There's a certain ethics and profession standards that they're expected to have, you know, which is selflessness and caring for the patient and being an upstanding model. So the Civil War really laid the foundation for professional nursing in the U.S. It changed public opinion about the role of women in healthcare and as nurses. And in 1868, Samuel Gross, MD, the American Medical Association president, strongly endorsed the formation of training schools for nurses. And so this trend started in New York, but it swept across the United States. And in 1884, Huron Road Hospitals, Cleveland Training for Nurses was the first nursing school west of the Alleghenies. By the way, I worked at Huron Road for about 15 years. And this nursing school was still going then, but it did eventually close. So the Cleveland area hospitals, like, for example, Lakeside Hospital, started as a direct result of the need out of the Civil War soldiers. Many of them were sick and injured. They had had limbs removed. If they'd been hit by a bullet, there was festering, sometimes for years, you know, maybe bone infections. And because of that, there was a need to treat these men for their lifelong illnesses, even if, you know, it was like pneumonias that had left scarring and they weren't able to work and breathe. And so this is a picture, I'll end here, but this is a picture of titled Osler. He was a famous doctor at Old Berkeley. It was from the 1870s to 1880s, so it was after the Civil War. But you can see the influence that the Civil War had. The residents, at first when I got this picture, I thought it was of soldiers, but it wasn't. This is how they dressed their residents in military-like outfits, but they were not U.S. Army outfits. You see the nurse standing there. That's the uniform then that Old Blockley had at the time. And what I'd like to think is that, although we don't know who's pictured here, that you see the man is quite elderly, and then there's an elderly person on crutches in the background, that these were probably, or could have been, Civil War soldiers that were still suffering, from infirmity and everything from their illnesses from the war.